Welcome, everybody. Yes. It's that time again. It's another essential conversations here at Wellbeings, and we're here with the wild and the wonderful Tara Coyote. So I'm kind of pick out how to introduce this young woman, but because there's so much to choose from here. But work with me on this because I'm kind of it's as I was sitting before I was going to have this podcast today, thinking about how I was feeling about introducing Tara to you all, and I was struck by three things which I just mentioned to Tara before we get started, like wisdom, heart. The heart, I sat with that. I felt into the heart of this woman, and the courage, and that combination. So that's what you're in for, everybody. So put on your seatbelts, tighten up. Now, so Tara is first of all, what struck me about this woman's life is she loves horses, something which, I've had such a history with, good and bad, which we may go into, but really about equine work, working with people, working with horses and people, working that relationship landscape with horses is profound work. So not only is she an equine therapist, she's also a teacher in equine studies. And she runs a horse sanctuary in Kaua'i called Wind Horse Sanctuary. He's a teacher of equine, and she also has been working over the years and guided hundreds and hundreds of people in private sessions, group workshops, and something I would love to learn a little bit more about is the grief rituals with horses. Tara's courage and strength is also echoing through her journey with her health. She was diagnosed, I don't know when she was diagnosed with cancer, but in 2019, they said you need to go into a hospice and it's done. But she said, she had a different story. She says, I'm not listening to that. And we're going to talk about that journey of her healing through natural ways and the magic and healing forces of working with horses that helped her throughout that healing journey. Also, Tara's memoir is Grace, Grit, and Gratitude. Wow, what a powerful name. Wow. Just bring that a little bit closer there, Tara, so we can see it. Yeah, wow. A cancer thriver's journey. Wow. And look at that beautiful woman in that picture right there, and the horse. Is that Comanche?
It's actually not Comanche. It's another horse, but Comanche's on the back cover. Whoops, how do we do this?
All right.
That's Comanche. That's my Mustang.
Yeah, something about those Mustangs. I want to talk to you about that in a little bit. So, guys, if throughout this journey here today, please, if you want to check in with getting a deeper feel of what we're going to talk about, please look in the link below, and you can get out. You know where to get the book and to get in contact with Tara if you feel drawn to. Also, Tara's also released the award-winning environmental 10-minute short film about climate change, equating it with her health journey in her film Honor the Earth, which is also something that you can check out. Is that on YouTube, or is that something that on YouTube?
It's on
also?
YouTube. Yep.
So, Honor the Earth. What a wonderful name. And and she's also at the moment living in Kauai in a yurt. With all her with her horses and her dog. Her dog's name is what's the little fella's name?
Xaria.
Xaria, that's Xaria, and a load of cats, and she's healing. She's thriving. She's thriving in the nature. So Tara, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Such an honor, all the way across the ocean, Hawaii to Ireland. Wow.
Yeah, and I remember as a young scallywag, I was so drawn to yurts as a kid. I love yurts. So something about waking up in them, and I still can't put my finger on what it is that just I wake up feeling different than I do whenever I sleep anywhere else. And I've scheduled in my to-do list in about 2 years' time to go to Mongolia to have an experience there of being on horses and to living outdoors in that landscape. So I'm actually very envious of where you are right now. So just so you know, guys, Tara's in the yurt as we're doing this interview. So
I certainly
so
am.
Tara,
What
tell
a
us a
great
little
vision.
bit about. Yeah, I want to take my wife and my daughter on that journey with me. Yeah, it's something which has been in my heart for a while. But yeah, Tara, so tell me a little bit about how this all started. How did you get into this whole thing about working with horses? And did this happen when you were a kid, or like tell us a little bit about your journey, how you discovered the magic and healing that horses can have when you're around them?
Sure, I would love to. So I was a horse crazy young girl, and I just wanted a horse so bad. I had a younger brother. My parents refused to get me a horse, so I pretended my younger brother was a horse, which he probably did not appreciate. But anyways, I used to spend summers with my cousins in New Hampshire who had horses because my parents would travel a lot. So that's where my love of horses began. And yeah, I was just really into horses, but I never had one. And then I became a teenager, and my interest in boys dominated my love of horses. And I kind of forgot about horses for many, many years, about 20 years, until a very difficult, tragic event happened with the husband I was married to at the time. And my life sort of fell apart. I was very depressed for a long while. I share about it all in my book, Grace, Grit, and Gratitude. Um, and it was during that time when I was in a really hard place that I remembered my love of horses. I got this instinctual feeling that I needed to go spend time with the horses again, which felt a little crazy because it had been 20 years or so since I had spent time with them. But I started spending time with a woman who did equine therapy, which was such a gift. It pulled me out of the dark space I was in, and it was so transformational. I decided to study this work because it had such a profound impact on me. And at that point, I owned a very successful Pilates studio. And I thought, you know what? I want to change my life. So over a period of many years, I ended up selling my Pilates studio and equipment. And I bought my first horse, Comanche, my Mustang, who you mentioned earlier. And I eventually bought a ranch, and I started a horse retreat center, which I had in Northern California, in Nevada City, California, where I would host workshops and private sessions, and people would stay there and do this equine facilitated work, basically equine therapy with clients. So it's such powerful work. It's highly transformational, and there's people all over the world that practice this work. So it's horses have an amazing ability to help transcend and transmute stuck emotions that we people tend to easily have. So that's a little bit
Yeah.
of my story in a nutshell.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I remember coming across my first. Well, first of all, we use equine therapy when we have clients and residents who are suffering with addiction, but also not just addiction, people who are just struggling in relationship or struggling in some sort of compulsive disorder or some sort of self-harming. We find that it was a beautiful therapy to add in along with, in sort of care planning for the clients. And I think almost there was never anyone where it didn't go well. There was just such a powerful landscape for to work with an animal and to start to build up what they struggled with within themselves and what they struggled with the other. And I find it very, very powerful to witness that. And another thing, specifically with mustangs, I met a woman who still a friend today. When I was maybe 20 years ago, and she brought mustangs. She was like a medical, like a shaman for horses, and she would put the horses into sweat lodges and bring them convalescent back into wellness after being mistreated. And she got 2 mustangs who had been mistreated, and she'd done this sort of rituals with horses. And then I went to meet these horses, and they came down together to meet me, and we all rolled on the ground together. And I stayed with them for an hour or two, and it was such a powerful transmission. I don't know what was going on, but I was so impacted for about 6 months afterwards. So the fact you're working with equine and that you're working with mustangs specifically, oh well, one mustang is like I'm like if I wasn't so busy, I'd be skipping over there to have a go, to dive in some more, because there's something I only realized today that it was mustangs that you have with you, and that was my one and only experience with a mustang, and it's never left me.
That's so profound. Thank you for sharing that. I think mustangs in particular are very special creatures because they were born and raised to whatever age they were taken out of the wild in the wild, so they still have that wild nature in them that is different from a horse that's grown up, and born by humans. So that's so special you had that experience.
Yeah, well, I didn't understand fully yet why there's these connections I'm having, why I was so drawn to your story. And apart from the courage that we're going to talk to you around your healing journey and your wisdom that is birthed through that journey, I didn't understand the horse thing as much until right now. Like there's like I really feel a resonance, on that level. And wow, that's powerful that after a while the horse has found you at a time of grief, a time of depression, and then through that hardship came transformation in a way,
Yeah.
and and anybody out there listening, again, sometimes we got to go into these dark shadow places that we avoid, and it can be transformational, it can be life changing, it can help you really have moments through the hardship where you can find a new door that you didn't know existed, and there's an invitation to walk through that. And I'm curious, as you started to train in equine and you started to move forward with your life, tell us a little bit around how was your body at that stage, and tell us the journey, of how your body got unwell and then how it started to get well again.
Sure. Yes. So I was running my horse retreat center in Northern California, like I was telling you about, and life was fairly good. I need to share it because this is part of the backstory. My best friend of 19 years was going through acute myeloid leukemia, which is the most aggressive form of blood cancer. And I was one of her main caretakers for 22 months from diagnosis to death. And it was a very beautiful, heartbreaking experience. She died young at the age of 46. And so I had that experience of being with her. And then almost exactly 1 year to the day of when she died, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer in September of 2016. And it was very shocking. I was quite young also. And, I lived a very healthy life, always ate organic, gluten-free, da, 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 da. And it was pretty shocking to have that diagnosis. And also because of the trauma around my best friend's sickness and death of, spending months and months in the hospital with her, I decided to do an exclusive 100% natural route of healing cancer, which I did for 2.5 years. It's just all natural medicines. I rejected the path of chemo, surgery, and radiation that was prescribed to me. And I was doing fairly well until a very stressful incident occurred in my life. And I realized that I had to sell my retreat center and give up the business that I worked so hard to create. And due to all that stress, the cancer spread from my breast throughout my body. It was in my lungs, my liver, my spine, my adrenal glands, my hip. And I decided to move back home to Kaua'i, Hawaii, which is where my father is from. And when I moved back here to Hawaii, it was around the winter or so of 2019. I was referred to hospice. I was literally dying. I had so much cancer in my lungs, I could not talk. I had to sit up to sleep for 2 months because I was coughing and gagging in my sleep due to the cancer in my lungs. I was walking with a cane. because my left hip was breaking, and I saw I was dying. I mean, it was very clear my life force was waning, and luckily the whole medical system here in Kaua'i, it's full of the aloha spirit. It's very kind and loving, and they were basically saying, "Okay, Tara, you have a choice. We know you don't want to do chemo, but it might save your life." And I was terrified to do it. I had to face a lot of the trauma around my best friend's death, which I did. And I decided I wanted to live. I took a hard look at my life. My son was 26 at the time. I thought, I want to be here for my son. And so I did about 9 months of chemotherapy, which was very challenging. During that time, I almost died a few times. I had to have emergency double hip surgery because my left hip broke. I had to learn to walk again. And I finished treatment in February of 2020 with amazing results. And so that was over 2 years ago, and I still continue to get great results in my scans and my blood tests. The tumors continue to shrink throughout my body. I'm doing really, really well. And I share about it all in my book, Grace, Grit, and Gratitude, A Cancer Thriver's Journey from Hospice to Full Recovery with the Healing Power of Horses. And I love that you brought up the horse work and magic first off, because like it's shown in my title, I really believe that my horses are a big part of my healing, primarily my mustang Comanche. So yeah, it's been a very full, powerful journey, and I'm so grateful to be alive. And also I just want to say, just to complete what I have to say, I really love what you said about diving into the darkness and coming out again, because I weave the story of Inanna, the 5,000-year-old Mesopotamian goddess, in my story, and her story is all about diving into the darkness to come out again. Like sometimes you have to die in order to be reborn. So that's quite a theme, I think, that everybody can relate to, whether we're going through a cancer diagnosis or whatever it may be, because that's what life is about, growth and transformation.
Yeah, wow. Like, there's one thing to to get that cognitively, and then there's something else to really do it. Like to really do it, in the sort of I work in an industry where it's all about helping people be accompanied into the places they least want to go. Into the grief, into the pain, into the childhood traumas, into the abuses, into the things that there was never anybody there to help facilitate the movement of that energy, or the presence that allowed it to move through them, and then the hauntings that also are handed down from other ancestors or other intergenerational facets. And it's something to have a fascination about it, and then there's something to really walk it. So I know the courage that it takes to be able to walk it in the face of, you know one of the scariest things in the world. I don't think there's anything scary as like death, or mortality, and then to be able to want to do that with integrity, and to do it with a sort of sense of, like this is where I'm going. And then the beautiful piece around letting go of that eventually, and then following something else to change it, to follow something that also feels important, to listen to different ears, to be able to get the benefit from chemo, or those sorts of procedures. And I think there's so many questions I want to ask you about this, but I suppose the thing that jumps out at me, that really has me, is like the coming home to the land, the coming home to, and how much that helped you in your redecision to expand your awareness, to allow this other thing in. But it was who you were and and your environment that I think made it something else. I'm curious about, what was it about coming home to your father's land, or that helped?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that question. That hits the heart of the matter there. Yes, there's a word called Aina, Aina, in the Hawaiian language, and that means land, basically. And there's also another word I want to bring in, Mana, Mana. It's in Hawaiian. It's like the power of the land. So I feel like the power, the mana of the Aina, of the land, is very powerful here in Hawaii. If anyone's been here, it's a very magnetic spot. We're out in the middle of the ocean, the most remote body of land, tropical, beautiful, magical, intense, all of it. And I really do feel, because my family goes back to the 1870s here, a lot of Portuguese from the Azores and the Madeiras, the islands off the coast of Portugal, came here in the 1870s, and that's where my dad's side of the family is from. And so I've spent a lot of my life here in Kaua'i. My dad obviously grew up here, and I feel like there's something very powerful to return back to the land and to your ancestral roots. And for me in particular, it's been very powerful. And I feel like a big part of my healing is to be on the land. I live in this yurt, in an off the grid yurt, total solar powered, with my animals. And it's a very simple life. It's close to nature. I live in a fancy tent when, there's bugs and the rain's loud, but I love it. It's really rootsy, and just, I don't need much else really. It's simple, and it's very healthy. It's like what you were talking about, bringing healing experiences to people. So I'm so grateful to live here, and I've had to travel back and forth to the mainland, to California, quite a bit in the last few years, because my parents have been sadly declining and passing. And every time I leave, it's such a beautiful reminder of like, wow, I'm so blessed to live here. There's something to be said by living close to the earth, which I feel like if humans were living closer to the earth, we'd have a much more healthier existence in our mind, body, and spirit. So yeah, that's hitting the crux of the matter. And I weave that theme throughout my book. It's like, that's where the healing lies, is living where your heart is happy, wherever that may be.
Oh, yeah, I'm so resonating with what you're saying. And, in the world of psychotherapies, we talk about the top-down approach or the bottom-up approach. And the top-down approach may be CBT, or maybe a psychiatrist or psychologist. And the bottom-up may be a sort of more somatic-focused sort of work with, a body-based psychotherapist, or a sort of somatic experiencing or something like that. But then there's another, so the real bottom-up is living on the land. In my opinion, that's the, you need that. That's the base. That's the base. And as we have been homogenized, or like we've been pasteurized, living through this life that we've been sold, that's the way to roll. And there's something so important now to my viewers listening. It's really important. It's like, I'm not saying that you all need to go and move and live in a yurt, but it's really important to take time to get on the land. And I'll be a little bit vulnerable here, as I'm really hearing, again, as I'm talking, I'm realizing why I'm here talking with Tara. Again, like, I resonate so much with being on the land. I've come back from Indonesia, and I'm here in Ireland at the moment. And there's such a land which, through lots of different experiences, I left with maybe a bad taste in my mouth. It just wasn't, or I wasn't opening to it. Because of my own pain and my own suffering. And as I'm sitting here in a farm in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of Northern Ireland, I'm getting to meet the things that I left. I'm getting to meet the land in a new way. Like, I'm coming alive in a way that I can't put into words just right now, but it's healing. And it's unmistakable. It's like a good night's sleep. You just can't put your finger on it, but it's unmistakable. And that's what I'm feeling right now. So I'm really loving that. Again, anybody out there who's feeling unwell, or, it's go to nature for a little bit. Go and dip your feet into a lake. Go and take your socks and shoes off and walk on the land. Go and walk to the beach. Go into the forest. Take a moment to just listen to yourself, to slow it down a little bit. Wow, it's so good. So you've got this wonderful taste that started to really improve your appetite for life from the land, Tara, and it's still holding a good taste in your mouth. This is like you're happy and content in this real nurturing environment. Yeah, wow. And, as what would you feel for the viewers out there? Because I am also a herbalist and I work a lot with patients who have cancer, had cancer, worried about it will return, struggling with the choices to make, or should I go natural or should I go Western allopathic medical route, and all these things. But again, a lot of this I'm sure will be addressed in your own journey in your book. But I'm curious about one thing. What do you feel, apart from the land, which I feel it feels like it was such a powerful part of the jigsaw for you? What was another part of the jigsaw? Let's talk about maybe the horses. What was it? Was there a moment in your journey where a look, a pause, a breath with your horses started to echo something that you knew in your soul, that something was changing? I'm curious about what was that like? How did the horses help you? And I'm sure that our guests might be wondering that also.
Yes. Great question. Loving this conversation. Yeah, it's a little hard to explain how the horses help, but I'll just share this example. And I do want to add too, because you mentioned the medicine part, and we can talk about this later. But I did, while I was doing chemo and all that, I continued to do non-toxic medicine. That's been my go-to all along, and I still do integrative medicine. I really believe in that path. So I just want to throw that in there, that I've always strengthened my immune system while I did whatever standard medicine is in there. So back to the horses. Just want to get that out there because I think it's important. For example, when I was going through the hard chemotherapy moments, there would be days I just feel so drained and tired. And at that point, I didn't have my horses so close to me because I didn't have an area where they could be, but they were on a large area of land where they could roam free on over 100 acres. And so I wouldn't see them too often. And also I was weak, I lost a lot of weight. I couldn't walk because my hip was broken or breaking. So, but sometimes, I'd be having a rough day and I'd be like, oh, I miss my horses so much. And they would literally come up to the fence to be as close as they could to me, as close as they could get to me, to be just kind of waiting there for me. Both my boys, my two horses, Blue and Comanche. And they'd be like, oh, hi, here, we're waiting for you. We can tell you're going through a hard time. So there was moments like that where I just felt like my body and my soul and my mind was so worked, facing the demons of chemo and my body having such a rough time. And they would just be there, these beautiful, huge-hearted creatures just showing up and hearing and listening. So there's such a sense of reflection and grace and calmness that comes with them, of just, us humans, we're so caught up in our minds and our stories and our anxieties, our frustrations, whatever it may be. And just being around a horse can be incredibly calming. And it's just, I feel like they're just there, and now I live close to them. I feed them 3 times a day. They're like literally right outside my door there. It's such a beautiful place and way to live with them. But just the act of, feeding them is bringing it close to home. It's like that chop wood, carry water thing. It's just the care of animals. And I'm speaking about horses, but of course that can be applied to dogs and cats, other animals too. Just animals are incredibly healing because they're just authentic souls. They're not caught up in the story in their mind. They're there for you if you have a close relationship with them. So that's my best job at explaining that question there.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. It's probably an accumulation of many moments and experiences, that even are non-verbal. Just like, whoa, what? Like, something's just happening here, and I'm curious about the happening of this journey into wellness and into recovery, and what other moments came along where there was a happening, where there was a pivotal moment in during the chemo or during the recovery phase, that there was a part of a reclamation of a part of the self, or a new part that was forming. I'm just curious about. I love these wonderful journeys where one goes into the dark soul of the night and comes out in a sort of renewal state. And to understand, and often this is talked about in books or in movies, but to understand like some little small snippets of moments where you realize, because I know it must be terrifyingly scary at times to like you're meeting one of the most profound fears that any human can meet, is like the ending of your life. And I'm curious about when you started to have some sort of like I know some people might say, yeah, I was strong all the way through, like it was easy, I did it. And I understand there's a human in there where that's not always the case. And I suppose my question is slowly getting to is, where were the moments where you started to realize that you either trusted the process, that you trusted that your body was changing and healing? I'm curious to invite that curiosity now.
Okay. Yeah. Great question. Yeah. I'd like to talk about the moment when I broke my hip and had to have double hip surgery. It was in the fall of 2019. It was so hard. I'm such an active person. I'm very independent. I'm like, I can do it myself. I ran a ranch by myself for years, took care of 4 horses. Um, but when I broke my left hip and I had to have emergency double hip surgery, I was stuck in bed for a month or so. I was dependent on everybody for everything, even at the beginning, like going to the bathroom. I had to have a nurse there. It was incredibly humbling. And then once I got back from the hospital, my cousin took care of me. And it was such a rough time because I love being active, and it was like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in bed. And then to add more to it, my partner and I of 4 years split up 2 weeks after I broke my hip. It was like the last straw of our relationship. And that was crazy painful because I was like, okay, this is a person who's been here for me, and now we're split up. So it was a heartbreak. And I had a mold outbreak in my yurt at that time, and I wasn't even living at my place. So it was just like I had to get rid of tons of stuff. And so it was just 3 things on top of another. And then plus I was doing chemotherapy on top of it as well. So it was about the hardest as it could be in my life. And it was almost hilarious how difficult it was. And I have a dear friend on island here who reminded me of the strength I have within myself. He reminded me, which I knew about before, but I'd kind of forgotten about, the work of Joe Dispenza, who wrote The Placebo Effect, and just the fact that I could transcend any difficult situation and that my body had the power to heal. So it was like you said, I was flung so deep down into the shadows. It was like my worst nightmare. My partner and I had broken up. My hip was broken. Like getting to the bathroom was a challenge. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong. My mom had recently been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So it's just a shit show. And I took that experience of being flung to the bottom to think, okay, I can get through this. I can find my strength. I can find humor in this crazy situation. And I just got super determined. I thought, okay, I'm going to take this situation and I'm going to heal. I'm going to believe in my body's potential to heal. My bones will heal. This cancer will disappear. Fine, I'm not in a relationship anymore. I will be okay. This is what's going to make me heal. And it did. After that point, I love that question because it was after that point that I realized my own strength and that I was so much more powerful than I gave myself credit for. And things shifted after that time. It took a while, but I learned to walk. I realized that I was better off not being in a relationship with my ex-partner. I eventually moved back to my yurt. And after that point, after things got so bad, everything was better. And once I began to dance again and I could walk normally, it was just like, okay, I've been to the bottom and back again. So, everything's relatively amazing now. And I still maintain and kept that attitude to the best of my ability. So there's your answer.
Wow. Yeah, wow, that's and again, just anybody tuning in, right now who's going through a hard time, or that works really hard to, not address things that they need to address, and even though they might feel like that they're hard or challenging or even conflict sometimes, that you know there's always there, and this is sounds like a cliche, but there's always something to gain. There's always some way to grow in it. There's always some opportunity to, even as I'm hearing you talk, and I'm hearing like, wow, like here's this independent woman, here's this woman so resourced her whole life, running a four-headed horse ranch by herself, super independent, which has its negatives and positives to that. And here she is, she's getting exactly, the universe is conspiring with her to be able to ask for help, to be able to, maybe not at the beginning want to, because she's so stubborn, I'd imagine, like it's like, oh no, like, like the universe showed up and says, okay, girl, you're going to get big heap teaspoonfuls of what you may need, but you may not have realized that you needed it in this dynamic, around like learning to take it in. You're giving it, like taking it, like even that, like, so there's so much wisdom in what happens to us sometimes, guys, and and Tara is a testament to that fact, where she got hit by about 12 left and right hooks, and said, you know what, yeah, I'm beaten, but I'm just going to take the steps to recover. I'm going to believe that it's possible. I'm going to believe that I have what it takes to do it. And she said yes to life. She said yes to life, and she said yes to wellness, and she's shining here today because of that. So anybody out there struggling, whether you've got a health issue, if you've got any sort of mental health issue, one of the main things that Tara is also echoing here is that she reached out for help. She got help she had her naturopathic team, she has her doctor team, she has her friends, by the sounds of it, really, really good friends, who like really lifted her and was there for her at times when she was vulnerable. Yeah, let's talk about that for a moment, Tara. Just like, what was it like at these pivotal times where you talked about your friend who came in and reminded you about, like the Joe Dispenza work, about reminding you that you have the power in you. What was that whole time like about forging friendships and deepening with other people? And how that helped along the way as well, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question, because I feel like a lot of people on the cancer journey, and I'll say specifically breast cancer, because that's what I'm familiar with, we tend to be givers and caretakers, which I totally fall into that category, where, or could be type A, like, let's take care of everybody else. And it's always about giving to others, but then you end up being depleted, or you forget about yourself. And of course, I took care of my best friend when she was ill, and I don't regret it at all. But when a health opportunity, I like to think of health circumstances, health opportunity, growth opportunity comes along, it's like a wake-up call of, oh my gosh, what do I need? And oh yeah, I'm important and I deserve to give to myself. So all these instances, especially when my health got really bad, I had to really look at every single relationship and say, okay, is this healthy? Is this feeding me? Or is this toxic? And I deserve to be around healthy people that feed me, even if it's just we're on one person, that's okay. But what do I need to take care of myself? So for me, getting so close to death like that, it really made me examine everything and really have to clear out what didn't serve me, to call in what really fed my health. And it's still, a check-in process to this day. It's not like we make up our mind and everything's perfect. We're given opportunities every day for our own self-care. So I think for others going through a health opportunity or any challenging circumstances, it's I want to bring up this concept, actually, because this is really powerful, because I'm here on the Hawaiian Islands. I have a dear friend, a Hawaiian man, who talks about the concept of aloha ma, which is self-reflective love. And so I think of that, and I weave this through my book too, about self-love, self-care, and that's really the crux of healing, and we tend to think that that's selfish, like self-care is selfish. I have another friend who talks about it as self-fullness, so it's really about what do you need for your own self-care. And if you're at such a crisis point where you are looking at your mortality, it's such a choice point of, okay, what do I need to do to take care of myself? And it's an opportunity to really step up and to know you deserve it. And so in that circumstance, to weave it around to your question, when I was at that point and needing help, like you said, I realized that I deserved help. And I was so humbled that I had to ask for help. Like, can you give me a ride? Can you help me to the bathroom? Can you make me food? Which you nailed me pretty well. I'm very stubborn and independent. And that was really challenging, and it's still really challenging, but it was a great lesson to realize how worthy and how loved I am, and how people wanted to give to me the same way I gave to others. So that was a blessing.
Again, the resonances are huge here in this conversation. Again, like you outlined the personal trait, and again, you're absolutely right. In my work with cancer patients, like that's what I saw, especially with breast cancer, was what we worked a lot on in Bali. And yeah, it was like this overextending, overcompensating, caretaking, rescuers that were, secretly, self-critical, self-loathing, which I was myself. So I became, and the most wonderful profession to get into, if you have that quality, is to become a psychotherapist or become a therapist of some kind, because then you can do it on a big scale. You can go and help. But then over years of working and rethinking about my thinking and really grieving those unhealthy relational styles, it's helped me be able to be in a place that I love, that self-reflective, loving. Well, how did he call it in the Hawaiian? I've never heard it put that way before.
Yeah, it's aloha, the Hawaiian word that means love. It has many meanings, but then ma, M-A after it. Aloha ma, self-reflective love.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So there's a little bit of dose of Hawaiian love spreading across the world to Ireland and other places.
Yeah. We all need that, because like you said, like that's a big part of it. To really look at, to even know that there's a different world. Sometimes we have the sort of characters where we think we are the problem. Other people think the world is the problem. And there's a way in which there's again struggling with that sort of dark sort of philosophy of needing to be more to be loved, for example, or that the world is really doomed. Is that it's really important to just like slowly start to talk to people who see the world differently than you, and to allow space to let someone else's thoughts and feelings and mind penetrate, impact, and possibly reshape you, whether it's seeing a therapist, whether it's going to equine therapy, or flying over to Hawaii, maybe hopping on a horse over there. Whatever it is, it's really important. Or buying a book that helps guide you to some self-realization around that there's another way. There's another way to live, and it's from the heart, and it's not in isolation. It's with people. It's really with people, and sometimes people who know things that you don't know, or know things that you've forgotten, that can help sort of stoke those fires of life force. Because I think every illness has a gift that it can bestow upon the beholder, the gift of vitality, if you stay the course. And again, Tara, we're just slowly moving to the end, but there's one more question I want to talk to you about. And, and me and you also have interviewed a guy who talked about grief and talked about death. So what I'm really hearing here is, as you're learning through this journey of dying off all these old ways of being, dying off as you're living, like there's a way in which you're really letting go, or shedding certain things that don't work, don't fit, don't align anymore with you. There's a sort of death process that you're going through. And I suppose as you die more as you live, life becomes worth living, I'm imagining. But I'm curious to find out, in your words, that that understanding around this journey and the process and the distillation that's at the end of it for you. It's a funny question.
Could you just rephrase that a little bit? So, because that's a full question. So I know where to go with it. Please.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about through the dying of certain behaviors, certain attitudes, certain ways of thinking, certain even cells in your body, that there's been a renewal of some sort. And just to really let the listener hear from you that what you find important through that process of letting go of certain ways of being that have supported, or deaths that have supported, more living and more aliveness and more vitality in your life.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Yeah, well, this brings into some of my vulnerability with what's going on in the moment. So you worded that really well, and I like to show up as authentically as I can. So I'm not going to give you a canned answer. So this is my answer. So I shared this with you before the interview, but my father passed not even a week ago. Today's Monday, and he passed Tuesday night. And my mom passed 4 months ago. So I was literally sobbing before we got on this call. I called my brother and I reached out for help. And, he died very suddenly. So it didn't hit me until a couple of days ago. And so I thought like, oh, should I still continue to do this interview? I'm like, no, I still got to show up. So that's why I'm here. But I'm sharing this because I feel like that same process is happening to me of, giving up my beloved parents in a 4-month period of time. It's very shocking. I was very close with both of them. And I'm really having to dig into that same deep strength that I talked about before. It's like, just have faith of like, all right, you're letting go of these people that brought you into the world, these amazing people. And it's very tragic. But yet, there's still beauty. The sun still shines. I'm surrounded by these amazing creatures. I have these lovely friends and family. And to find that hope and that joy still. So I feel like there's a big death process happening to me right now. And I feel very raw. And it's very challenging because my dad and I in particular were very close. And I feel emotions coming up when I'm starting to talk about it. But it's really finding that faith and belief in the beauty and the light to continue on in the face of just utterly being knocked off your feet, basically. So that is a real life, real answer of me, what I'm telling myself of like, also just feeling the feelings, when I'm mad or sad or full of grief, just crying, like falling onto the floor, crying, and then getting up and finding beauty, whatever it may be, even if it's in, a plant outside your door. And as I'm talking, I have a cat here that's licking me. And so that's the power of the animals tuning in, because she's saying, oh, I can feel your sadness. So, wow. So there's an honest, authentic answer for you from the raw heart of Tara.
Yeah. I'm just feeling that right now. And very grateful that this is a testament to the distillation of a life that has you vulnerable and authentic in the way that you're letting us in on where you are and how it is and how it's not finished and how you're back in the cycle again. And I think this is important for the viewers to know that it's secular. It's like we go through something. There's an opportunity for despair, sort of an initiation of sorts, and there's a sort of process, and there's an opportunity to get something, to have a renewal, to have whether it's a healing or a clear-headedness or a centeredness or an openness or a new way of relating, and then there's another one, and there's another one, and I suppose the words of Joseph Campbell would say that life should be full of a continuous one hero's journey after another. Just really allowing yourself to to move towards life in the face of all its struggles and its challenges and its ups and downs. And that's what brings us alive. And that's what I feel from you here, Tara, today, is the aliveness that's here with your spirit, with your heart, and with your struggle, and the beauty of all of that, you know. And I'm really touched, you know, and by you being here today. And I'm moved. I'm feeling the space with you. Honored to be with you in it. Privileged, in fact. And for the guests who are viewing, you know, they take a moment and just pause and just feel into where the struggle is. Feel into your heart. Take a moment to slow down. Take a moment when it's hard. Take a look at the plant on the table. Take a look at the plant outside. Take a look at your cat. Take a look at that daffodil, and especially in Ireland, we got daffodils coming up right now. And take a moment and just pause, slow down, and just feel. You know, take a moment. So thank you for giving us all a moment to come out of our heads and into our hearts, and just be here for a bit. And Tara, I'm so happy that we got a chance to have this conversation, and I'm hoping that anyone who's watching, if you like this, if you got impacted in any way, if you're curious, please hit up Tara, get her book, whatever something started to kind of come alive in you, something started got moving around in your mind about this, follow it, you know, get some more info. We're just touching the surface of our bigger and broader conversation you can have with yourself if you read Tara's book. So again, if you liked it, hit the share button, everybody, or comment, or hit a like, because it helps us reach out and touch other people. But for now, Tara, thank you, and love to your horses, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you so much. It truly was a joy to chat with you. An honor. Mahalo from Hawaii.
Mahalo. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back same time next week. Be well.